Picture the single greatest bribe in all of ancient literature. 7 tripods of gleaming bronze, 10 talents weight of gold, and a single talent is a fortune, 20 burnished cauldrons, 12 race horses bred to win, 7 skilled women of the island of Lesbos, prized across the Greek world for their weaving, and the woman Briseis herself given back, the very prize whose loss began the whole quarrel, while the great king swears a solemn oath that he never once laid a hand on her. Item after item, the hoard climbs higher, and it is not yet finished, for this is only what the author gives today, before a single further blow is struck against the walls of Troy. Because once Troy falls, the author swells again. A ship loaded with all the bronze and gold one man can haul away. His pick of the 20 most beautiful women of the sacked city, marriage to one of the great king's own daughters with a princely dowry, and kingship over 7 well-founded citadels, cities of his own to rule. Everything a warrior's world could possibly give, heaped into one overwhelming hoard. 3 ambassadors carry the whole glittering pile across the beach to a single tent. And the greatest fighter the Greeks possess looks at all of it and says no, not a haggle, not a counter-offer, a refusal so complete it calls into question honor itself, glory itself, the entire way of life that made every gift in the pile mean anything at all. This is Book 9 of the Iliad, the 5th great movement of the poem and one of its turning points. To understand how a man could turn his back on all of it, we have to see how far his people have already fallen. For 2 long books, the fighting has gone badly for the Greeks, worse and worse without Achilles, who still broods beside his ships and refuses to fight. The army is dispirited, its leaders desperate, and so Agamemnon, commander of all the Greeks, stands and proposes the unthinkable: give up the war, launch the ships, and sail home. He had said this once before, back in Book 2. But then it was a trick, a test to measure his soldiers' nerve. This time, humbled by disaster, he seems to mean every word. To feel the danger in those words, remember what happened the last time. Back in Book 2, Agamemnon had floated the very same idea: abandon the war, sail home, but only as a test, a way to sound out whether his army's spirit had survived the loss of Achilles. It went horribly wrong. To his shock, the soldiers leapt up as one and rushed for the ships, ready to be gone, and it took all of Odysseus' cunning to chase them back and shame them into staying. That memory hangs over the whole camp, so when the king says it again now and seems to mean it, no one can be sure the army will hold. This time Diomedes answers him, one of the bravest warriors the Greeks have left. Sail home if you wish, he tells his king, but the rest of us stay and fight to the end. Then old Nestor rises, the wisest head in the camp, the man who tried to stop this quarrel at its very beginning, back in Book 1. He reminds Agamemnon what Achilles is worth and presses him toward the one move that might turn the war: swallow your pride, send an apology, offer recompense. And at last Agamemnon yields. He admits aloud that he was wrong to seize Briseis, wrong to dishonor the greatest warrior in his army. He will make it right, he says, with gifts beyond anything a fighter has ever been offered. Strip that staggering offer down, and it comes to 3 things: wealth that proclaims a warrior's prowess, the horses, the gold, the bronze, a brilliant marriage into the royal house, and kingdoms of his own to rule. Hold those 3 up to the light, and something stirs. They are the very 3 gifts 3 goddesses once laid before Paris: power over cities, glory in war, and the most beautiful of brides, the choice that lit this entire war. Did Homer mean the echo? Scholars cannot untie the knot. Perhaps it is a deliberate whisper across the poem, the same 3 fates offered again. Perhaps these are simply the 3 things any warrior on earth would crave. Either way, this is what now lies in the balance before Achilles. If the gifts are chosen with care, so are the men sent to deliver them. Agamemnon picks 3 ambassadors, each for a precise reason. First, Odysseus, the cleverest of all the Greeks, and by far the finest speaker in the army. He is not the wisest, that honor belongs to Nestor, but no one alive can build an argument like Odysseus. No one can make a case sound so irresistible. He is the hero the Odyssey will one day follow, quick-witted, silver-tongued, endlessly resourceful. If any voice on earth can talk Achilles out of his anger, it is his. So Agamemnon sends his sharpest tongue to open the case as well as it can possibly be made. The second is Phoinix, an old man and Achilles' foster father. Long ago he came to live in the house of Peleus, Achilles' own father, and he raised the boy from infancy. Now he stands in for the father who is not here, and he can pull on Achilles from two directions at once: the love a son owes his father, and the deference a young man owes to age. He is a father figure in every sense, and he will speak of the cradle and the small child on his knee. If the finest orator opens the case with cold brilliance, this old man is sent to reach the heart, a shrewd, deliberate choice. The third is Aias, the mightiest Greek warrior left standing, now that Achilles will not fight. He comes to speak soldier to soldier. Even I cannot hold the Trojans back alone. The army needs you because you are the best of us, and only the second best is truly fit to say so. Look then at the embassy Agamemnon has assembled, the most persuasive voice in the whole army, and behind it, the two deepest bonds his world knows how to feel, father and son, and the warrior beside warrior, finest rhetoric, deepest loyalties. If anything under heaven can move Achilles, surely this is it. The three men set out across the sand toward his tent. The scene they walk into is one of the most haunting in all the poem. The Greek ships lie drawn up along the shore. Across the plain, Troy looms on its high ground. And there, apart from the war, sits Achilles, playing the lyre and singing. What he sings, the poet tells us, are the Cleandron, the glories of men, the famous deeds of heroes long dead. Read that again. The greatest warrior of his age, who has laid down his sword and stopped winning glory of his own, now sits in the firelight and sings the glory of other men. He does not earn fame any longer, he only remembers it and sets it to music. And see what Homer is doing here. While Achilles sings the glory of dead heroes, Homer sings the glory of Achilles. The song folds in on itself, a poet inside the poem, fame giving fame its only immortality. This is the single moment in the whole Iliad where we watch a bard at work. The Odyssey is full of such scenes, but here we glimpse it just once. Into this quiet, the three ambassadors step. Achilles rises and welcomes them warmly. Whatever his rage at Agamemnon, he bears these three no grudge. They are his friends. He seats them, pours the wine, sets meat before them. Only when the meal is done does he ask why they have come and what they want. Odysseus speaks first, and he lays the offer out almost word for word, the 7 tripods, the 10 talents, the cauldrons and the horses and the women, down to the daughter and the dowry and the 7 citadels. It is the very speech Agamemnon made, now repeated line for line, and that repetition is a quiet masterstroke of Homeric craft. The poet composed one set of glittering lines and lets us hear them twice, first from the king, now from his envoy. On the surface, nothing has changed, but everything depends on what a speaker chooses to do with a fixed and inherited form, and Odysseus does not merely echo the king. When the glittering list is done, he adds something of his own, words he will pointedly never repeat to Agamemnon afterward. Even if you loathe the man, he says, even if his gifts disgust you and your anger will not cool, then pity your comrades, dying out there on the plain, and think of the towering glory you would win by cutting down Hector. With that, Odysseus quietly steps beyond his instructions. The cleverest of the Greeks has already grasped what Agamemnon has not, that the recompense, however vast, may not soften this man's wrath at all. And he is right. Achilles answers with a speech that shakes the foundations of his whole world. Odysseus had appealed to honor. You lost it when Briseis was taken, but see how much more comes back to you now, until no man alive could doubt your greatness. Achilles says he no longer cares for any of it. The same fate waits, he tells them, for the man who shrinks from battle and the man who fights with all his heart. Coward and hero are held in a single honor. Death comes the same to the one who has done nothing, and the one who has done everything. And nothing, he says, is won for him now. Nothing for all the times he has staked his life upon the spear. Here is the heart of it. If honor can be torn away on the king's mere whim, then honor was never truly his to begin with. A thing that vanishes at another man's word has no real value. The Agamemnon now offers to hand it back changes nothing at all. The wound was never that the prize was taken. The wound is that it could be taken. That a lifetime of courage rests on so unstable a thing. A gift returned as easily as it was seized is no gift worth dying for. So why fight? Why stake everything on a system that can strip a man bare on a whim? Achilles has stopped believing there is any answer. He goes further still. He would not marry Agamemnon's daughter, he says, though she were lovely as Aphrodite herself and skilled at the loom as Athena. There are other women in the world he might wed. And then he tells them something no other man in the poem can say. His mother, the sea goddess Thetis, has revealed to him that two separate fates are carrying him toward the day of his death. If he stays and fights at Troy, he will never see his home again, but his glory will blaze on, undying forever. If he sails back to the land of his fathers, that glory dies with him. But he will live long, grow old, and slip toward a gentle death in peace. Stop here, because this revelation is strange in two distinct ways. First, mortals almost never know their fate. Every man has his appointed day of death, but it stays hidden, seen only in hindsight once he has already fallen. A rare few learn it in advance. Oedipus, above all, told he was doomed to kill his father and marry his mother, so that the whole tragedy becomes his desperate, failed flight from the knowledge. But such foresight is vanishingly rare. And the second thing is rarer still, almost unique in all of Greek myth. Achilles is not merely shown his fate, he is handed two of them, laid side by side, and given the power to choose which one will be his. That is simply not how fate is supposed to work. And faced with that impossible choice, Achilles says plainly which road he means to take. He will go home, he will lay down the spear, give up being a warrior, let every scrap of his glory perish, and live. Sail with me, he tells his friends, give this up and live. With those words he leaves Phoinix and Aias stranded. Odysseus had made the great appeal to honor and to glory, and Achilles has answered that both are worthless to him. Honor because it can be stripped away, glory because it weighs nothing against a long life and a quiet death at home. He has rejected the entire warrior code they were all raised in. And now somehow the other two must move a man who has renounced everything they live by. See for a moment with the size of what he has just done. In this world, honor and glory were not decorations, they were the entire reason a man picked up a spear and walked toward death. A warrior traded his one short life for fame that would outlast it. That bargain was the beating heart of the culture. And Achilles has just looked at that bargain and called it worthless. Not Agamemnon, the whole system. Honor that a king can grant and revoke is no honor. Glory that cost him his life is not worth the price. He is unraveling the very code that made him a hero in front of the men who came to invoke it. Old Phoinix tries next, and he tries with everything he has. He reaches first for love, and he tells his own story. Long ago, he says, he quarreled bitterly with his own father over a woman. His mother had begged him to turn the woman against the old man, and the rage of it drove him from his home forever. The parallel to Achilles hangs unspoken in the air between them. But that exile, Phoinix says, is how he came to the house of Peleus and to the cradle of a small boy. and he remembers all of it. Achilles held on his knee the meat he cut into little pieces to feed him, the wine the child spat down the front of his shirt, and every trouble a baby brings. I am the nearest thing to a father you have left, he says, and you the nearest thing to a son I will ever have, for I am childless and there will be no other. It was Peleus himself who placed you in my hands for this war, and charged me to see that you became the man you ought to be. He presses the bond from every side at once. The infant he fed, the son fate never gave him, the trust your own father laid on him. It is a plea built to break a heart of stone, and when it is finished, he asks only that Achilles set his anger down now, while the gifts are still there for the taking. Then Phoinix turns to the deep past and tells a story to prove his point. Long ago, he says, the hero Meleagros quarreled with his mother and withdrew from the fighting, exactly as you have now. His people came to him with gifts, begging him to return, and in his fury he refused them again and again. He relented only at the very end, when his city was already burning, and by then the gifts had vanished, and he won nothing for yielding. Learn from him, Phoinix urges. You too will lay your anger down in the end, every man does. So lay it down now, while the reward is still on the table. Wait too long, and you may save everything and gain nothing at all. There is something profound in the way Phoinix argues. Reaching past raw feeling, he turns to the old stories. Let me tell you how a hero once behaved. And that is exactly what the poem itself did for Greece. When Greeks asked how a person ought to act, they looked to Homer, to how Achilles behaved, how Odysseus behaved, how the great men of old conducted themselves. So here a character reaches for the authority of the past, inside the very poem that was the past's greatest authority, a story that teaches by story, the epic reflected in its own mirror. And yet, for all its beauty and its craft, Phoinix's plea fails. Achilles answers him as he answered Odysseus. He no longer wants the honor Agamemnon can give, and the gifts do not move him. Two appeals have failed, only Aias is left, and Aias is a soldier, not a talker. His speech is short and blunt as a spear thrust. He turns first to the others. Come, we are wasting our breath here. Let us go home and carry the answer back. Then he rounds on Achilles himself, pitiless he calls him. Hard-hearted, a man who has forgotten the love his friends have always shown him, throwing away the comradeship that binds an army together and keeps it alive. Plain words, roughly spoken. And somehow they reach the place in Achilles where all the eloquence of Odysseus and all the tenderness of Phoinix could not. For the first time, the greatest of the Greeks begins to soften. Only a little, but a little is something. He will not sail home after all, that much he now grants, reversing what he swore only moments before. But he will not fight either. He will sit idle beside his ships until the Trojans come surging all the way to the Greek camp and put the fleet to the torch. Only then, and only to save his own vessels and his own life, will he take up his spear again. A defensive stand, and nothing more. No offensive war, no charge across the plain. This is the whole of what the embassy can win from him, and this is the answer they must carry home. It is not remotely what Agamemnon prayed to hear, and as Book 9 closes, the Greek camp is left exactly as desperate as before. Where this scene falls in the poem is no accident. Book 9 lands about a third of the way through the Iliad, and some scholars believe the epic was once performed over 3 or 4 days at a religious festival. If it was spread across 3 days, this is just about where the first day's recitation would have ended and the second begun. The poem runs to 24 books. A third of them by count is 8, but the books vary greatly in length, and to recite the whole of it in Greek takes something like 23 or 24 hours, though how fast the bards sang and how much music carried them, no one now can say. Right at that 1/3 theme, Homer halts the war and gathers up everything the poem is truly about. And look what he gathers up. The quarrel of Book 1 returns, the same two men and the same woman, Briseis, at the center of the storm. But the roles have flipped. Once Agamemnon tore her away by force, now he pleads to give her back, and it is Achilles who refuses to receive her. Here the two great words the poem lives by, honor and glory, are set out one final time. And this time the greatest of the Greeks stares straight at them and casts them aside. It is the fiercest possible way to strike again at the poem's central themes, at just the point where a listener most needs them driven home. And the same great turning comes once more, near Book 18. And this is the deepest meaning of that refusal. In turning down the recompense, Achilles turns down far more than a heap of treasure. He rejects the entire framework of his society, its measure of worth, its currency of honor, its promise that a warrior's death buys something imperishable. The quarrel that began as one man's wounded pride has opened out into a question about the whole way a people chose to live and die. And so the poem swings its full attention onto glory itself. Kleos, the fame that outlives the body, the thing man killed and died for, the force that drives the entire Iliad. Achilles has put it on trial. So the embassy returns across the dark sand with empty hands. They had carried a warrior everything his world could possibly give, gold and bronze, 12 horses, a royal bride, and a crown of 7 cities, glory heaped upon glory, and they watched him refuse all of it. And in that single quiet no, Achilles does what no gift could ever undo. He calls into question honor, glory, and the whole warrior ethos that made him the greatest of the Greeks in the first place. This is why Book 9 stands like a pillar at the poem's 1/3 mark. It is the moment the Iliad turns inward and begins to weigh with unflinching honesty the very values it was built to sing.